The day my father agreed to give me away. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten me. He didn't even explain much. He just looked defeated. And that scared me more than anything else. Before I go on, if stories like this pull you in and make you feel something real, hit the like button. Share your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. My name is Elena Carter. And I learned very early that love doesn't always protect you. Sometimes it trades you. I grew up watching my father slowly lose himself. Not all at once, but piece by piece. First his business failed. Then the bills started stacking up. Then the house stopped feeling safe. Every knock on the door made my stomach twist. Men would come asking questions. My father would nod, promise, apologize. And after they left, he'd sit in silence, staring at nothing. At night, I heard him walking back and forth, like his thoughts wouldn't let him rest. That evening he asked me to sit down. No warning. No softness. "There's a man who can clear everything," he said quietly. I felt relief for a split second. The debts. The house. All of it. I leaned forward. "What does he want?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said it. "He wants you." The words hit me slow. And then all at once. The man's name was Victor Hale. People in town never spoke about him openly. They whispered. They exaggerated. They warned. They said he lived alone outside town. That his face was badly scarred from a fire. That no woman ever stayed long. They called him a monster. I begged my father to stop it. I cried until my chest hurt. I told him I would work, I would sacrifice, I would do anything. But when someone is drowning, they grab whatever keeps them afloat. 2 weeks later, I stood in a borrowed dress, hands trembling, marrying a man I had never spoken to. Victor stood across from me. He didn't smile. Didn't touch me. Didn't look at me like he owned me. When the ceremony ended and everyone turned away, he leaned closer and said softly, "You don't owe me anything. And I won't hurt you." That was the moment my fear changed into confusion. Because monsters aren't supposed to sound like that. That night I didn't sleep. Not because Victor touched me. He didn't. Not because he spoke too much. He barely spoke at all. It was the quiet that kept me awake. After the ceremony, he brought me to his house at the edge of town. People always said it looked dark, cold, unwelcoming. But inside it was clean, simple, almost careful. He showed me a small room. "This is yours," he said. "You can lock it if you want." Lock it. The word echoed in my head. I nodded, holding my breath as he walked away. I listened to his footsteps fade down the hallway, waiting for something, anything to happen. Nothing did. Hours passed. I sat on the bed, still in my dress, heart pounding at every tiny sound. The house creaked like old houses do, but no one came to my door. At some point exhaustion won. I lay down fully dressed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how a monster could be so absent. Morning came quietly. No shouting. No anger. No demands. When I stepped into the kitchen, Victor was already there. Cooking eggs like this was the most normal thing in the world. He noticed me and stepped back immediately. "Morning," he said. "I'll leave once breakfast is ready." That was it. No staring. No orders. No expectations. I didn't know what to do with that. We ate in silence, sitting across from each other like strangers. Every move he made was careful, measured, like he was afraid of crossing some invisible line. Finally, I asked the question that had been burning inside me. "Why did you agree to this?" He froze for a second. Then he answered quietly. "Because your father was desperate." That wasn't an answer. "Why me?" Pressed. He looked down at his hands. "Because I know what it's like to be trapped by things you didn't choose." That was the first time I really looked at him. Not the scars. Not the rumors. The exhaustion in his eyes. Something didn't add up. Monsters don't give space. They don't offer safety. They don't speak like someone carrying guilt. That day, I realized my fear hadn't disappeared. But it had shifted. And somehow, that felt even more dangerous. The days that followed felt unreal. I kept waiting for Victor to change. For the mask to slip. For the man everyone warned me about to finally appear. But he didn't. Instead, he stayed distant, almost invisible. He woke up early and left for work before I was fully awake. When he returned, he kept his space, speaking only when necessary. No questions, no demands, no rules. Made me uneasy. Because kindness without explanation can feel like another trap. One afternoon, I noticed a locked door at the end of the hallway. I hadn't paid much attention to it before, but something about it pulled my focus. "What's in there?" asked, trying to sound casual. Victor stiffened. "For storage," he said quickly. Too quickly. I didn't push, but curiosity settled in my chest. Later that evening, while we were eating, I finally asked the question I had been avoiding. "Did you want this marriage?" He set his fork down slowly. "No," he said. The honesty caught me off guard. "Then why go through with it?" Yes. He took a long breath. "Because sometimes doing the wrong thing for the right reason still feels like the only option." I didn't understand what he meant, but I felt the weight behind his words. That night, I heard him coughing through the walls. Not once. Not twice. Over and over. The kind of cough that comes from deep inside your chest. The next morning, I found medicine on the counter with a note beside it. "Take this if you feel sick. Breakfast is in the oven." I stared at the note for a long time. No signature. No explanation. Just care. The town's stories started to feel wrong. I remembered the way people looked at him. With fear, with judgment, with certainty. And yet, in this house, he moved like someone constantly apologizing for taking up space. For the first time I wondered, what if the monster they created wasn't the monster at all? And what if the real story was locked behind that door at the end of the hall? I tried to ignore the locked door. I really did. But when you live in silence, small things grow loud. Every time I passed the hallway, my eyes drifted toward it. Not out of fear anymore, out of questions. Victor noticed. One evening, as he came home earlier than usual, he found me standing near the door. I wasn't touching it, just looking. He stopped. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he sighed. Not in anger, but in exhaustion. "You don't have to be afraid of that room," he said. "I'm not," I replied. And to my own surprise, it was true. "I just don't understand it." He nodded slowly, like he'd been preparing for this moment for years. "It's where I keep things I don't want the world to see," he said. "Not because they're dangerous, but because people already decided what they mean." I looked at him. "Decided what you mean?" He didn't deny it. That night he didn't open the door. But he did sit across from me at the table longer than usual. The distance between us felt smaller. Not physically but emotionally. "I wasn't always like this," he said quietly. "I used to trust people." The words hung in the air. Waited. "There was a fire," he continued after a pause. "At the factory where I worked. I pulled 3 people out." My breath caught. "No one talks about that part," he added. "They talk about what my face looks like now. They talk about how I stopped showing up. They don't talk about why." I finally understood the scars. Not just the ones on his skin, but the ones carved deeper. The town didn't see a survivor. They saw something uncomfortable. Something they didn't want to explain to their children. So they named him a monster and moved on. That night, as I lay in bed, something shifted inside me. I wasn't safe because Victor was powerless. I was safe because he chose control. And that realization frightened me. Because it meant my life hadn't been sold to a beast. It had been handed to a man the world already burned once. After that night, nothing was the same. Not because something dramatic happened, but because something quiet did. Understanding. Victor didn't suddenly open up. He didn't start sharing everything. But the air between us softened. We began existing in the same space without tension pulling at every breath. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I noticed how careful he was with everything he touched. Like he expected things to break if he wasn't gentle enough. Does it still hurt? Asked suddenly. He paused. What? The burns, I said. Your scars. He thought for a moment. Some days, he admitted. Mostly when it's cold. Or when I remember. I nodded, unsure what to say next. You can ask, he added quietly. You don't have to carry curiosity like guilt. That surprised me. So I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since the wedding. Why did you agree to marry me? He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Because I knew what the town would say about me anyway, he said. I figured, if they already think I'm a monster, I might as well be useful. The words hit hard. You think saving my family was being useful? Yes. He looked at me, then really looked. No, he said. I think giving you safety was the only decent thing I had left to offer. I felt my throat tighten. For the first time I realized something painful. Victor didn't see himself as a villain. He saw himself as damage. That evening, I went into the kitchen and cooked dinner without being asked. When I set the plate in front of him, he stared at it like it didn't belong there. You didn't have to, he said. I wanted to, I replied. That simple exchange changed something between us. Because fear had slowly been replaced by choice. Choice felt like freedom. But I didn't know then that the town was watching. And that once they noticed, I wasn't afraid anymore. They would try to remind me why I should be. It didn't take long for the town to notice. People always notice when a woman stops looking afraid. The first comments came quietly. Side glances at the market. Whispers that stopped the moment I turned around. Then the warnings started. One afternoon, an older woman I barely knew pulled me aside. Her voice dropped low, like she was sharing a secret meant to save me. You should be careful, she said. Men like him don't change. I asked her. Do you know him? She hesitated. No, but I've heard enough. That answer followed me home. Victor was repairing a broken chair when I walked in. His hands were steady, focused. He didn't ask why I looked upset. He never forced conversation. They're talking again, I said finally. He nodded like he'd expected it. They always do. Does it bother you? Yes. He shrugged. It used to. Then I realized rumors are easier for people than facts. That night, a stone hit our window. Not hard enough to break it, just hard enough to send a message. Victor froze. I felt my heart race. But instead of anger, he sighed. They want you scared, he said calmly. If you ever feel unsafe, tell me. I looked at him. And what if I don't? His eyes softened. Then that's your choice. The next morning I walked into town with my head high. And for the first time I understood something important. The town wasn't afraid of Victor. They were afraid of losing control over the story they had created. And the more they pushed, the more determined I became not to let them decide my life. Days passed, and the whispers grew louder. First I tried to ignore them. Pretended it didn't matter. But every glance, every comment, every smirk reminded me that the town still believed the monster story. One evening, while I was preparing dinner, Victor walked in, looking unusually tense. They're trying again, he said quietly. People are watching. Paused, spatula in hand. What do you mean? They're testing us, he said, almost to himself. They want to see if fear still works. If control still works. I set the plate down. Then let them watch. Victor looked at me, eyes wide. Are you sure? He nodded. I'm done hiding. If they want stories, let them have them. But my life, that's mine. That night, a group of townspeople gathered outside. Rumors. Threats disguised as advice. I stepped onto the porch, my hands trembling slightly. Victor came up beside me, silent but steady. Do you want me to handle this? He asked. I shook my head. No. This is mine. And for the first time, I saw something in Victor's eyes I hadn't before, respect. Respect for my courage. Respect for my choice. The crowd hissed and muttered, but their words didn't reach me. Because I realized, fear only works when you believe it. Victor stayed beside me silently. Not controlling. Not forcing. Just there. And I knew then. Monsters aren't always who the town says they are. Sometimes monsters are just misunderstood men. And sometimes, the real strength comes from the woman who refuses to be afraid. That night felt different. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just heavy in a quiet way. After the crowd finally dispersed and the street fell silent again, Victor and I went back inside. No words were exchanged at first. The house felt smaller somehow, like it was holding everything we hadn't said yet. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at my hands. Victor stood near the door, unsure whether to come closer or keep his distance. "You didn't have to do that," he said finally. "I wanted to," I replied. "For myself." He nodded slowly. "That's all I ever hoped for." We sat there, separated by a few feet and a lifetime of misunderstandings. "I know this marriage wasn't your choice," he said. "And I won't pretend it was mine either. But I need you to know something." I looked up. "I won't touch you unless you ask," he continued. "Not tonight. Not ever. You deserve control over your own body. After everything that was taken from you." My chest tightened. No man had ever spoken to me like that. "I'm not scared of you," I admitted softly. "I'm scared of what people will do when they realize I'm not." A faint smile crossed his face. Not happiness but relief. "Then we're scared of the same thing," he said. That night we didn't cross any lines. But something else happened. Trust. Not the kind built on promises but the kind built on restraint. As I lay awake later, listening to the steady rhythm of his footsteps in the other room, I realized something important. This wasn't a prison. It was a place where I was finally being given a choice. And that changed everything. I thought I had already learned the worst parts of Victor's story. I was wrong. It happened a few days later, on a quiet afternoon when the sky looked too calm for what was coming. Victor came home earlier than usual. His face was pale, jaw tight, like he'd been carrying something heavy for too long. "There's something you should know," he said. I felt it instantly, the shift in the air. He led me to the end of the hallway. The locked door. "I never wanted you to find out this way," he said, resting his hand on the handle. "But you deserve the truth." My heart pounded as he unlocked it. Inside wasn't darkness or danger. It was memories. Old photographs lined the walls. Newspaper clippings. A few medals placed carefully on a shelf. And in the center of the room, a single framed photo of Victor, before the fire. Before the scars. "This was my life," he said quietly. "Before everything burned." He told me how the fire wasn't an accident caused by carelessness, like the town claimed. It was faulty equipment. Ignored warnings. A company that chose profit over safety. "When the fire started, people panicked," he said. "I didn't." He went back in. Again and again. By the time help arrived, the building was gone. And so was the man he used to be. "They praised me at first," he said. "Called me a hero. Then the lawsuits started. The company needed someone to blame. So they blamed the man who survived." His voice cracked. "The scars made it easier for them. People believe what they can see." I felt tears burning my eyes. "They didn't ruin your face," I said softly. "They ruined your life." Victor looked at me then. Not with shame, but with something close to relief. "That's why I stay quiet," he said. "That's why I don't fight back. Monsters don't get believed." I reached for his hand without thinking. And he didn't pull away. That was the moment everything shifted. Not because I felt sorry for him, but because I finally understood him. And understanding is the most dangerous thing of all. Because once you see the truth, you can never pretend you don't. After that day I couldn't sleep. Not because of fear. Because of truth. Once you know something, really know it, your mind refuses to let you rest. Victor's story replayed over and over in my head. The fire. The blame. The way the town had decided who he was without ever listening. And then there was me. I had been sold to a monster. But what if the real crime wasn't the marriage? What if it was the silence? The town didn't stop. If anything, they grew bolder. One afternoon, my father came to see me. He stood at the doorway, unable to step inside. "You should come home," he said quietly. "People are talking." I looked at him. Really looked. "The same people who watched you drown and did nothing." "Yes." He flinched. "They say Victor is dangerous," he added. "That you're not safe." I laughed softly. "They never cared about my safety before." My father's voice broke. "I was trying to save us." "I know," I said. "But you didn't save me. You traded me." Silence filled the space between us. That night, the pressure reached its peak. Someone painted words on our fence. "Monster. Run while you can." I stood there, staring at the letters, my chest tight. Victor watched from behind me. "You don't have to stay," he said quietly. "I won't stop you." That was the test. Not the town. Not the rumors. Not the scars. I picked up a bucket of water and began scrubbing the paint away. "I'm not staying because I have nowhere else to go," I said. "I'm staying because I choose to." Victor didn't speak. He just stood there, eyes wet, hands clenched, like he'd been holding his breath for years. That night, for the first time, he cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just silently. And I realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. The town's story was breaking. And when lies start to crack, the truth doesn't whisper. Comes roaring. The truth didn't explode. Surfaced slowly. Like a wound finally allowed to breathe. Started with a newspaper. A small article at first. Buried near the back pages. Someone had reopened the factory fire case. A former employee came forward. Then another. Documents appeared. Ignored safety reports, forged signatures, threats that had kept people quiet for years. Victor didn't seek attention. He didn't give interviews. He didn't defend himself. He simply allowed the truth to exist. And once it did, it couldn't be ignored. The town grew uncomfortable. People who once crossed the street to avoid him now pretended they had always known. Always believed. Always doubted the rumors. I watched them with a strange calm. Apologies came softly. Awkwardly. Too late. One afternoon a letter arrived. It was an official apology. And compensation. Victor read it once, folded it neatly, and set it aside. "That doesn't change the past," he said. "But it might protect someone else." He donated most of it. Quietly. No announcements. No praise. Life didn't turn perfect. But it turned honest. My father came by again. This time he stepped inside. "I failed you," he said. He nodded. "You did." But I also hugged him. Not because it erased the pain. But because healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing what you carry forward. As for Victor and me, we didn't rush into anything. Talk. We learned. We healed slowly. Love didn't arrive as fireworks. It arrived as safety, as respect, choice. And that was enough. The town never called him a monster again. But even if they had, it wouldn't have mattered. Because the scariest thing of all isn't a scarred face. It's a lie told so long that people stop questioning it. And the strongest thing a woman can do is choose the truth, even when the whole world tells her not to.